I'm Ramon Pater. I'm a restoration architect and a heritage consultant from the Netherlands, working on a project also founded by, subsidized by the Getti Foundation called Het Schip, in English, the ship. It's a famous building from the 1920s made by Michel de Klerk, and I'm the head restorator of that project. And I'm here in Uruguay to look with the team and with my experience to work with restoration of brick buildings to the Obrero Cristo Church. There are different projects. The ship is from the 1920s. It's more traditional built, but Michel de Klerk uses a lot of new and experimental techniques in order to get his expressive ways in relation to a ladrillo gesture, working on the construction and making constructions and making shapes in order to design its buildings. The difference maybe between the team here and my experience is that I start with the material. I look at the stone, I look at the clay it was made of, the origin of the clay, the way it was baked in the oven, and all that components that make the material and the different different properties of the material. And that's where I start and look at what can the material do, what can we expect of the material, what are kind of properties do that material have in order to make the restoration work. So I work from a different kind than the team over here. They start with a broad examination, and that's partly because I think their knowledge of masonry is quite shorter than the tradition we have in Holland, because in Holland we started in the 12th century with bricks, in order then here in Uruguay, where probably the last 200 years bricks are made, and you see that we advanced a lot more in the way we used to make the stones of the bricks. Looking at the church right now, I went there yesterday and I saw the church and we saw the bricks, and I looked at the bricks and I could give input in how the bricks are made and what the people here can expect of the properties of the brick. And we saw already that making the bricks, when the bricks were made, the clay wasn't condensed enough, it was pressurized not enough in order to get a more dense stone. It's a very good stone, but it has a lot of porosity. And also for the mortar we see lots of things with porosity and the way it takes in the water has lots to do with the properties and the good properties of this mortar. So I started with mortar, with stone, and looking at their properties in order to give my advice to the team. We can look over here, we can look over there. That's what I would say. The input I can give here with my experience, especially from the core materials of the stone, the core materials of the mortar, in how they correlate and when they are baked or when they are put together, what we can expect of them. There's lots of problems with the reinforcement. That's for sure. The steel there is less mortar on the steel. Water can penetrate through the mortar, reach the steel, and the steel expands and corrode it. And that is of course a problem, and especially when used with a large density stone. And in my opinion, a little bit too hard mortar. It gives tension and it cracks, and that's one of the most problems you see at this church, especially with the bell tower. And that's because the bell tower, with its height and also its openings, all its windows where rain can penetrate through the construction, you have more problems with corrosion than the church itself. The church itself, I must say that the conservation, the state of conservation isn't that bad. If I compare to the ship, where we have to take large parts out of the construction and renew the masonry, and that's probably also based on prior restorations made badly, they didn't use the right stones. So in the 1970s the ship was fairly hard attacked by prior restorations, by using the wrong materials, and we have to redo it. So all the steps we did all the steps they did in the 1970s, we have to redo it again, and that's a big and large on a large scale restoration prior to the Cristo Obrero church, where it's very locally and it's I think very reasonable and you can handle it, and it doesn't take a lot to make a good restoration and preserve it. Then the most important part is also the maintenance. It's not only the restoration, it's also the part of restoration, but looking ahead and looking in the time and how you preserve it in the time, because I think that's the most important thing. You're not doing it for now, you're doing it for the future. And that's always the balance you try to find if you are restoring. You're restoring, but you're also looking at what I'm doing, what will be the effects on the future, and how can I preserve it for the future. I think that's the main point we have to work on. And looking at other buildings of Diciembre, because of the same techniques and materials were used. And I think with all the learnings you've been now done with the church, it gives a good base for all the other projects of Diciembre, and give a good example of how to use it. And it's the same with the ship, because we use the ship also as a standpoint for all other work of Michel de Clercq, and we are currently also working on the second housing block in the Netherlands, with the same mind and the same ideas and the same research we have done on the ship. So you're learning, and you're learning also how to restore other buildings from the same architect with the same kind of thoughts and the same kind of materials. Yeah, then we see between the ship and the church, we see Michel de Clercq already experimenting with reinforced brickwork in order to get his expressive forms. And we see the same problems over there, because in the 1920s Michel de Clercq also used steel. He didn't know how many mortar there should be on the steel in order to get it free from water. So we see less decking. What's the English word for it? Covering. Sorry, covering. Yes, covering of mortar. So that problem is the same in the church, and we see it also here in Uruguay. Yeah, it's in both. So there are both experimental buildings from a different time period, from a different mindset, where Michel de Clercq used it for expressive, to expressive his architecture, and Diciembre was more a constructor and making pretty constructions with it.
What was the expression?
It was all both are very expressive. Both are very expressive, absolutely. And if you see pictures of both projects next to each other, you see a lot of comparison in ideas and the lots of expressive of these buildings. They are quite similar. They are quite similar. At the ship also, we see that the original material, where the facade is still original, it works perfectly. And it works perfectly for over 100 years. So we said, if that's now our main basic point. We say, we want to reproduce the same quality they used 100 years ago, that worked for 100 years, that worked well for 100 years, and we see that all the additions made 20, 30 years ago, they are giving us the problems. So we are putting out all those problems from the 1970s, 1980s, and we want to try to make the facade back to the condition originally made and still proven to be right. Is to tell us to reproduce the quality made by the Estin in the 1950s, 60s. You have to alter because there are also weak points in the construction. But you have to look at these weak points. But the basic is good. The Estin's basic was good, but he had some weak points maybe in the way the mortar was made, and I think that's the main problem, because the stone, well, it is porous, but it has quite a dense. It is quite dense and strength, and so I don't think that that's the real problem is over there. It's probably the covering of the steel and the water.
The ingress of water.
Yes. So I think that the main issue is here to look at the mortar and how to restore the mortar, but in mind that you have to make a mortar that is comprise and is compatible with the stone and with the original mortar. And that's I think the main question, and that is just looking at porosity and the use of the watering and of the cement used in this used as a mortar in order to reduce the watering reaching the steel. I think that's the main part, because getting out the steel is no option here. That's massive, and I don't think it's necessary. Looking at the steel, yeah, you see corrosion, but I've seen corrosion much worse than this. I think we are now at the point where we can, with as little effort as possible, to restore it and to maintain the high level of quality. And if you don't start now, the problems will increase rapidly. Yes. So I think that this is the right moment in order to do something with little effort.
It makes
but
tradition.
Yes, and then you can make it also a quite durable restoration. So this is the moment to do with little effort a good alteration in order to look for the future and preserve it for the future.